and we're joined today by Farrah Berrou. Farrah is a friend. She has a podcast, B for Bacchus, focusing on wine in Lebanon and the region. She's also part of the A Better Beirut podcast team, a great podcast focusing on positive stories and genuine contribution to making Beirut and Lebanon a better and healthier environment for all its citizens. And during the Uprising, Farrah has been managing an Instagram page called Moments of Thawra. It's just a collection of photos, snapshots of day-to-day stuff, of every kind of action that you can imagine taking place on the streets of Beirut while the uprising is underway. All of this information is included in the details box below. And before we get to the interview, if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider a contribution through Patreon. Any contribution is appreciated. The details box, there's a link. If you go to our website, beirutbanyan.com, just click on the Patreon button. This is an independent podcast. Any donation is appreciated. When I first met Farrah, when she wrote a blog post about the tour, and this is years and years back. The blog is called Bambi's Soapbox, and I highly recommend checking out the blog because there's an archive of reflections where you see Beirut changing in the background, and it's changing not necessarily in a better way. It's actually at times falling apart, and Farrah just captures these moments by reflecting on her own emotions, on her own experiences in the city. Check it out. It's bambisoapbox.com. And for this episode, Farrah and I discuss all that is happening in the country. The protests, the prospect for political and economic reform, what is really at stake, how the state can actually change, whether or not the demonstrations have that within them. True state reform, and in a sense, the birth of a new country. We share our optimism, our skepticism, a friendly exchange in the middle of all that's happening. For episode 22, I'm Ronnie Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan. What does it feel for you right now to be, in a sense, an observer, a storyteller of sorts, watching the story unfold?
I don't really feel so much like an observer because I've been going down to the streets every day, and I've been plugged into what's happening when I'm not there. I'm online all the time, scanning Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and streaming MTV on my TV. So it doesn't really feel like you're only watching. It feels like you're constantly plugged in. And you don't know how to stop. It's hard to look away.
You mentioned before we started recording that it's taxing.
It is. It takes so much mental capacity to kind of process what's happening, but also to process your own emotions to it. So you're asking me, like, how do I feel? I don't even know how to articulate it in a sentence because you get so overwhelmed with, like, this entire spectrum of emotions.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and it's amazing because you're seeing the entire country is finally uniting for something we've all been waiting for, to unite against the common enemy, if you want to put it like that. But it's also, there's so much fear that it's going to slip away. There's so much anxiety that something's going to happen, or people are going to get hurt, or they're going to lose faith, or they're going to lose steam because, history has shown us, and that's recent history, that people don't really withstand this for very long, and eventually they want to go back to normalcy. They want to go back to sleeping right, to not having to be doing this like a full-time job. I haven't done anything else. I don't know how to do anything else. Like, we were originally supposed to be recording this for something else.
It's actually, that's important to mention here. You started your own podcast about wine.
Yeah.
And wine not just in Lebanon, but in the region, and that's what we were going to jump into.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, it would be strange to talk about the history of wine right now.
I can't even think about it. Like,
Yeah.
a week alone, like, I can't even remember what exactly happened last week. It all feels so like another lifetime.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will actually be true, and we will be entering a new lifetime after this is over. But yeah, I wouldn't know how to talk about all the other things that I do normally, given what's happening on the ground, given our new reality of our daily lives.
Although you are, I mean, I know you said you're not necessarily an observer, but you are writing about what's happening. And that's how I first got to know you.
Yeah.
You share your, not your immediate emotion, but you are you are analyzing to a point your emotions and you're writing them, you're reflecting. Before we get into that though, I want to just mention, you said common enemy, and I think that might be the difference about this time around and previous attempts at changing the country.
Absolutely.
But I want to get what that means to you exactly, the common enemy.
I think it's different this time around, and it feels like a common enemy because it feels like the entire country, not just the central district of Beirut or the capital city.
So common, you mean
Geographically, demographically, all denominations, everyone is uniting, and they're feeling like we are tired of being forgotten, of not being, taken into account when they're deciding our fate.
Let's get a little further. What do you exactly mean by they? Do you mean?
I mean the ruling class. I mean the politicians.
So this is everyone to you.
Yeah.
There's no
كلهم يعني كلهم.
Yeah. So this, which is being chanted now,
right,
down the street, you think that it really means all of the above. There's
yeah.
no one being excluded.
No, because even now we actually have people coming out against those untouchable names.
Yeah.
Before there were names that no one would dare utter or dare criticize.
Yeah.
Nasrallah, Berre, all of these, high-ranking officials or whatever you would call them.
Yeah.
Now people are outspoken. They're banding together and they're not afraid anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that's going to last. That's what everyone's afraid of, because it's that has given this movement some kind of legitimacy and more power, because we finally feel like everyone is being listed in that, that blacklist.
Yeah.
It's not just Hariri, it's not just Aoun, it's everybody.
Everybody.
And everybody is against that everybody.
Right. Now, maybe it's worth saying that although we both are Beiruti, and we love this city.
Sort of.
That's exactly my point. Yeah, so we are Beiruti up to a point. We both live here. We reflect a lot about the city. You work for a podcast called A Better Beirut.
Yeah, but I also mean that I'm technically Beiruti, but I'm technically from the south.
Exactly.
So it's
100%. That's what I wanted to...
It's a weird / kind of identity.
Sure. And that's exactly my point, that you're originally from the south, I'm originally from the north. Mm-hmm. And both of those areas are united, or it looks like there's a united demand for change.
Right.
And the north, and I say this as somebody who tries to repel the extremist label of Tripoli. It is a conservative city, it is a religious city, it is rigid in its ways to a point, it is economically deprived. It was euphoric to watch Tripoli dance. And that was an unexpected outburst of joy that Tripoli I don't think has experienced for decades.
Yeah, and it was amazing to see them, show solidarity with Sur, Tyre, and with Nabatieh and all the other cities that they don't normally associate them together.
Yes.
And beyond that, it was almost funny to see other people react to Tripoli and Nabatieh and all of these different cities like, oh my God, look at these people, they have fun. It's like, yeah, of course they do.
Do you think
it's humanized everybody.
Absolutely.
In the eyes of everyone else.
Let's say a few years from now, do you think people will look back and watch those brave protesters in Nabatieh who stood up and said things you were saying earlier, demanding the fall of their own leadership too, that and Tripoli, united, standing up saying we want change? Do you think these are going to be the symbols we look back on and say this is why it's special?
For sure. Because I think they should be given more credit than the people that are in Beirut and downtown.
Right.
Downtown has been, the home of protests for years, but it never really pushed the limit further.
Yes. It's a familiar city.
We did it in 2015. We did it in 2005. We did it years after years. And you can argue that it got rid of the Syrians, but there wasn't this massive change. The system stayed in place. The rotten core was still there.
Yes.
And now we have Tripoli and Nabatieh and Akkar and all of these different cities that are usually forgotten. They're not they're considered as if they're in a different country. People always talk about Lebanon as if it's only Beirut. It's not. And now you feel like, yeah, everybody's on TV. You have the TV split into like 8 different screens.
That's true. You know what? That is a very good. You are an observer.
Well, I should be after being glued to the screens for 8 days.
That's an astute observation. It is the first time you see all these cities on the same station doing the same thing.
Yeah, and everybody
Chanting.
getting airtime.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not just Riyadh Salah, it's not just Smarter Square.
Yeah.
You have Jaladib and Zoo and Mazra'at Yashur. And
Yes.
I'm sure there are places that other people have never even heard of. They're like, where is that? Where's Kfar Man? Like,
Yeah.
so it's been
And they're
great.
watching each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And they know, oh, our brothers and sisters in Nabati are getting beaten up. Let's go. We have to help them. What can we do? They try to mobilize. I don't know if it's being effective, but just the fact that they're acknowledging that others need help and they want to do something about it is huge.
I want to ask you, we're describing a situation in 2019. So there's been a buildup of real economic pain.
Yeah.
Forget environmental pain, forget the trash, forget the political degradation, forget even the cultural erosion of this country, forget all that. The pain of this financial burden all Lebanese face together. Do you think at the end of the day that is at the core what triggered this movement?
I mean, personally, no, but I think on a global, like, not global, on a national scale, yes, because it's the one thing that everybody uses. It's the one thing that everybody cares about. It's the one thing that everyone is kind of deprived of, too. Everyone isn't making as much as they wish they were, and that's not just like an ambitious thing. We're actually underpaid, but that's because the entire economic system doesn't help even the business owners if they wanted to pay you more.
Right.
So much of the profits go into overhead and paying for taxes and extra things that they shouldn't have to pay for, that cut into their balance, and then in the end they have nothing left to pay the people that work for them. But it's not even at that, even at the bottom of the, what am I trying to say here?
I mean, there's a sense that everyone's been plundered of their
and it's not recent. It's been happening for years.
But you don't think, for you personally, it's not necessarily that alone, that there's more at stake?
No, for me personally, it was everything altogether. It was because of the environment and because of the trash crisis and the way that it's affecting the health sector and the way that people are getting sick. Almost every friend I have has a family member that has either passed away or is sick.
From the environmental...
I can't say that it's a direct result of it, but I'm sure that, it's not helping the kind of environment that we're living in and the way that they just kind of try to come up with solutions that will just make them more money or will sweep it under the rug, literally.
Right.
Like there aren't long-term goals and long-term ways to actually solve these problems. And it's as if they're not thinking about the people as something that matters and that, they're the people that elected you. You work for us.
But is this protest then a culmination of all the other protests before? And this is a political protest, it's an economic protest, it's a trash crisis protest, or is it really just a separate, unique moment where people are ready to overthrow the state altogether?
I think it depends who you ask, because there's a lot of people that it's the first time they join the streets. It's the first time they leave the house. It's the first time they're like, no, I should be down there.
Yes.
For some people, maybe like you and me who have been to protest before, we do feel like we've been doing this. This isn't new. We've been on the street. I've been in that same spot in Martyrs Square before. I've taken pictures with my dad. I've done this.
In the first few hours when we were watching it, did you feel that sort of, it's not going to work?
Strangely, it felt different from the beginning. I don't know what it was, because like Thursday night, I was doing a work thing, a wine gig, at the
You said it before we started that it feels like, it doesn't feel like a week ago. It feels
No,
like
it doesn't. It feels like
lost in
months
time.
ago. I don't even know what day we're at right now. It's just, I know it's day 8. And it's
that's interesting. Yeah, it's day 8.
Yeah,
It's not
I was in
October.
the square sometime and someone was like, yeah, it's Tuesday. I'm like, isn't it Monday? What?
Right.
I just know that it's day 8 today. Like, that's my new calendar.
That's funny. Yeah.
But yeah, before this started, I got home and I was like, oh, stuff is happening in downtown. That was Thursday night.
Yes.
And then Friday morning, people are starting to gather. So I went down at like 11 in the morning.
So the next morning you were there.
Yeah.
And this is before, of course, this is before the violence.
Yeah, the
erupted
violence
that
was that night.
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah.
Thursday night was also a little
Thursday night was
heated.
chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got rough, which I think is actually why also it
It
seemed
built.
legitimate
Oh,
too.
So that initial
Spark?
Spark, yeah.
Yeah, because it felt like real anger. And it felt like these people are pissed off.
Yeah.
This isn't going to go away.
Yeah.
And since there were people going down the next day and people weren't going to work and roads were closed, it was like, oh, something's happening.
Yeah.
It's catching on.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether it was going to survive the weekend. I mean, we kind of have this pattern where we go to protest on Sundays and everybody's free, they don't have work and whatever, and everyone goes down. All right, we're there.
There were lots of people there on
Yeah,
Sunday.
Sunday was the biggest
Yes.
showing of people. But
It was
what tends
half
to
the
happen?
population of the country was protesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what tends to happen is Monday comes along and people kind of just go back to work and okay,
Yeah.
فشينا خلا. We let off some steam and okay, back to reality. But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh wait. And I think that Hariri was like the 72 hours thing was purely trying to, wait it out and wait
Yeah.
till the weekend was over and get past Sunday,
Yeah.
like also kind of working through that deadline.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone was waiting for Monday thinking, is it still going to be there? Is it still going to be there? And that's how it's been. I mean, we were talking about this before, like you go to sleep and you're always afraid that it won't be there in the morning.
Let me ask you though.
They're going to shut it down.
We're not political analysts. So
No.
We're not, and we don't have access to any of these people right now anyway. So we don't really know what's in the mind of Saad Hariri or Michel Aoun. But going back to that initial statement, and I think it was Friday, when Hariri
Yeah.
said, I need 72 hours to, give me 72 hours before I make another announcement. This is just subjective opinion. Do you think it was a mistake on his part to even stick around over the weekend? Do you think it's a mistake that he is still the Prime Minister of Lebanon?
I think he made the wrong move, but I'm glad he did.
Okay. So he made the wrong move, meaning that he should have resigned at that time? Or
I mean, that's what the people want, but I think it was good that he didn't do it right away because it built more, there were more people.
yeah.
There was more anger. It kind of gave everyone another final confirmation that
Yeah.
we don't matter.
So the fact that he actually decided to try to buy himself more time, that energized the street further.
Yeah, because I mean, so in 3 days you're going to come up with solutions for everything that you haven't done in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're going to be a competent and capable government.
Or even the fact that he was betting on the rest of the crowd, the state, to do its job in 72 hours.
No, and like
Yeah.
you're going to come in 72 hours and give us this, beautiful golden list of promises and we're going to be like, "Okay, cool, let's go home." Come on, like
Yeah.
you're already killing your own credibility by saying I need 72 hours and we'll get all our ducks in a line and everything will work. Who's going to believe that after all of this time?
Yeah. So the fact that he, whatever reasons he thought he could pull it off, maybe he doesn't know what he's doing, maybe. But that led people, that energized the street to reach where it is now.
Yeah.
You think that, I haven't heard that yet. That's interesting. So he may have reluctantly
Made it worse.
made it worse.
For him.
For him directly,
Yeah.
but better for the
And the same
future
thing
of the
with
country.
Nasrallah and the same thing with President Aoun right now.
Well, let's get into both.
Yeah.
So let's first talk about Aoun. We're watching what we don't know if it was recorded.
It was recorded, I think.
And it looked odd given that the camera angles and the repeated edits.
And the coherency of the whole thing was just
And it's
kind of all over the place.
It's not just that he's 84, it's that he seems truly incompetent at this point. He looks like an incompetent person. An incompetent president in the best of circumstances, and now a withered figure. Now, I'm trying to be careful here because there are protests in support of him as well. There are many people showing up.
I think it's mainly because of the office he holds.
Exactly. So, this is where I wanted to get into. Is it enough that we're seeing hundreds of thousands of people in Beirut, hundreds of thousands of people in the north, tens of thousands in the south? We're seeing up to 2 million people on the streets in Lebanon, but we don't see a huge crowd showing up in front of Ba'abda. Or for that matter, Ain al-Tini. We don't see the Speaker of Parliament with people seize of flags in front of him calling on him to resign. We don't see that in front of Ba'abda calling on Aoun to step down. We see, in a sense, the loyalists showing up, protecting. That always, to me, is a sign of the sectarian psyche is still around. Because he looked, what he said was equally unimpressive, right? Aoun did not say anything that...
No, and it was kind of insulting too.
Yeah,
it was
so-
pre-recorded. It wasn't live. It was
Exactly.
8 days too late. You know, like
Exactly, it's 8 days too late, and there's nothing of substance in it anyway.
No.
So, but then you see people supporting him to tooth and nail.
I think that's also very fear-related, though. Like maybe the reason people aren't going to the Ba'abda Palace is because they feel like he's not even there. I think the reason that the protesters are going to where they are at because they're blocking main roads.
Right.
They're not trying to, single out any particular politician. They're trying to make everybody give up on their regular life.
So the protests
And join
in
the street.
Jadid are
Yeah.
assigned to Aoun, in that sense. Like cutting off the highway going north, or the protests going south, that's assigned to Berri.
I don't think it's location associated with a particular Zaim. I think these are the main arteries of the country.
Yeah.
And so if we want people to actually take this seriously and we want them to stop what they're doing and
Yeah.
stop giving these excuses that I have to get to work or I have to go to, I don't know, whatever errand that is so pressing right now,
Or visit relatives in the south, or in
whatever
the north,
it is, they
yeah.
don't have that excuse anymore. We've blocked the roads, you can't get to work, get on the street.
Yeah.
And what's really nice now is that they're not doing it with dumpsters and tires anymore. They're doing it with their own bodies.
Yeah, the first 2 nights, Beirut looked like a war zone.
But it was necessary, I think. I think it had to start that way at least
Yeah.
for people to realize that this wasn't just, people really sad about what's happened. They're
Right.
pissed.
Yeah.
No, like people are infuriated.
Yes.
And it might not stay peaceful anymore.
There's these symbolic moments that people are sharing repeatedly, and they look like they outweigh the violence quickly.
Yeah.
The army soldier crying to the national
I'm hoping
anthem.
that's true.
Yeah, I mean, both are shocking to a degree. The joyous celebrations and the violence that's emerging. They're both, and I only hope that the joy outrides the pain and the violence, because we know that this country does go through periods of euphoria followed by waves of violence, and it's not immune.
Yeah, and the feelings that you get from all those things have kind of been condensed into this week. So it's like you're feeling everything you feel in a span of like 10 years of living in the
Absolutely.
country.
Yeah.
You're feeling it in one day,
Yeah.
and all right after each other. Like there was one of the mornings I went down to help out with the volunteers that were cleaning
Yeah.
the Martyr Square in Riyadh Salah. So there's a group that goes down
It's every
and
morning,
they
actually.
bag all of the trash and
Yeah.
all of the recyclables and they sort the stuff and then it gets picked up by three or four different organizations and they recycle everything.
Yeah.
This is just another like example of how we will recycle if you give us the means to do it.
It's actually a sign of citizenry. That this
Yeah.
is genuine citizen.
There's no
duty.
payoff for this. They just
Absolutely.
want this to keep going
Yeah.
and their whole like motto is if we're going to take over the streets, we have to clean them first and
Yeah.
like there's ownership there and people are taking back their city. But the point was like I went down there and you're walking through and you're seeing all these people doing this for no reason at all other than just this is my country. And it's really overwhelming and it's really powerful to
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah.
And then I got to go into the Grand Theater, which you never get to go into. It's blocked off, and in all fairness, that's probably a good thing because it's not in good shape. It's really dangerous.
And I think even the mosaic the glass windows
The
are not
stained glass.
stable.
No,
and it's-
most of it isn't, and there's
Yeah.
holes in the ground. The flooring isn't safe.
Yeah.
Like I've been worried that some protesters are gonna fall through the floor, especially at night.
Yeah.
So they've blocked it. Like they close it up every evening.
Oh, so it's open now during the day and closed
No,
at night?
it's closed completely now.
okay, yeah,
But I think they had reopened it again. Like someone had broken through the gate again.
Yeah.
But that's purely because people don't have the access to these
Sure.
beautiful pieces of our history.
I-
And you
I-
go in there and you're
yeah.
like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is incredible. Why
Yeah.
can't we see this? And it's like constant emotion. It's sadness. It's people. It's humanity. It's citizenship.
We're breaking into our history.
Yeah, and that's nicely said. You're seeing your own, fellow, not just citizens, but people who live here. Syrians, Palestinians, Lebanese, everybody who's here. You're like, oh, we're all in this together.
And I went to the Egg.
Yeah.
And the Egg, I've been in there many times. I've been in there when it was broken into in the past. I've been in there when it was open, when it was being used.
Okay.
Until last night. I went back in and I saw, it could have been maybe grandparents climbing up the emergency stairs, which were wobbling. I mean, one slip and you're dead.
Yeah.
Climbing up, in my opinion, risking their lives to reach the top of the Egg and see Beirut from up there. And that was crazy to me because it's one thing to walk up to see the old cinema inside. It's another thing to be
To
that
go on top.
excited. Yeah, and who knows how stable the structure is? Who knows the stairs, how sturdy they are? They're sturdy enough, I guess, for there to be hundreds, perhaps thousands of people now that have been up the top of the Egg and reclaiming something. This is a real recapturing, and I don't know if maybe they've never been there before.
I think it's also like maybe we won't get this chance again.
Yeah.
Maybe we won't get to do this. Right
Yeah.
now, there's kind of like there's no one stopping us.
Exactly. There's a window
Yeah.
to see things that you don't usually get to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, that was incredible because it's not just the young kids being reckless. It's everyone, all ages, wanting to share this experience together.
But I don't think young kids are being reckless either. They've been probably the forefront of this too, like
Yeah.
at the very, like, you have students who are not going to class and not just because they want to ditch. They're like,
Right.
no, what's the point of learning all of this if we're not going to have a job, if we're not going to have a country, if we're not going to, why
We have
go to
faculty
school?
giving courses in
Yeah,
Martyrs
it's
Square.
in the Egg.
In the Egg, yes. Which, I mean, it's special.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe for a larger audience outside, they would never appreciate really what that is. Just taking a class into an abandoned building, but it is special.
Especially the Egg.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's the symbol of, what downtown was, what
Yeah.
it became, and it's also something that kind of you drive by it every day and
Yeah.
you forget it's there, but you also are like, why isn't it something, like,
Yeah.
why hasn't it been brought back to life? And now it has.
And you said at the Grand Theater, it's a building that we all know it's around. We never go in because it's walled off.
But actually, a lot of people didn't know it was there.
Yeah, I heard. People that don't really, they can be forgiven too because it was never reopened.
No one publicized it.
Yeah.
Like, no one ever talked about its story. No
Yeah.
one. Only recently did a photographer go in there and post some pictures on a blog, and people were like, "Oh, where is this?"
That was actually just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and if you're not,
Yeah.
if you're not like an urban exploration, junkie, like some people are.
Or if you don't want to be chased by security, which are always
Yeah.
chasing
I
people
mean,
out.
I just, a friend of mine, we both tried to get in there, like just a few months ago. We wanted to get in,
Yeah.
and it's all blocked off. So I was like, maybe we can squeeze in here somewhere.
Yeah.
And then the bomb squad showed up
Oh.
because there was like some mass happening at the church across the street. So
Oh,
we
right.
luckily were not inside when they went. But like it was just one of those things where you can't just go in. You can't
Yeah.
just, and there's no information. There's no plaque. There's no thing that tells you what this is.
You
I
know-
had so many people responding to my stories on Instagram when I was in the theater. They're like, "Where is this?
Yeah.
What is this?"
I think even Martyrs Square, people know that that's where you go to protest. But the history of Martyrs Square, I I mean, thankfully, there's enough shared about that location. Aside from Martyrs Square, I don't think a lot of people really know the magic of that part of
Unless
Beirut.
they take your tour.
I mean, last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I shared the story of Martyrs Square, and I had people on the tour emailing me saying they never expected that within 72 hours or whatever, a few days, that Beirut will be there protesting, demanding dignity in the same place that they were a few days earlier. And it was symbolic for them. For us, it's everything, because that is still the magical spot of the city. We deviated a bit from something. Yeah, but it's a good deviation because we're both passionate about this. You said the fear. It's fear that keeps people away from Ba'abda, or what a combination of different types of fear. You don't want to. There's a sectarian component there, I think, still. Even though people are protesting Aoun from all over the country. You also mentioned Hassan Nasrallah.
Yeah.
Dahi is a suburb of Beirut. It's not a distant geography. It's just 1.5, 2 kilometers away from us here. It's right down the street, actually. And Dahi does not have the same kind of images that we see throughout the country. It hasn't really joined in.
How do you know?
Well,
How do you know people who live in Dahi aren't in downtown?
Well,
it's not that far away.
Absolutely. This is what I was going to ask you. So I asked this question. I got that answer from a previous episode. That
Like, why do they have to
Dahi-
protest in Dahi?
exactly, that you come, if you're in Dahi, you come to downtown. But I think my question is not about Dahi per se. It's about Hezbollah. We see the images of the army rounding up protesters against the protesters, some of them waving Hezbollah flags. We saw that. I think it may have been Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
We see Nabati, people saying that Nasrallah is part of the equation, that they should all go, including him. Now, this is just a subjective opinion. Is something like Hezbollah, what they are in Lebanon, do you think their future is at stake as well? And I don't mean them as a party. I'm not talking on a sectarian level. I'm talking about that role that they have. They've been able to outride many different events.
Yeah.
They're stronger today than they were before. Are they out of the equation for now?
I think people were a little disappointed with Hassan Nasrallah's speech. Hezbollah has always kind of operated separately from the state anyway.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been that shocking if they were like, yeah, we don't really agree. But I mean, that's kind of what everybody's saying anyways. All of these politicians, they're all pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to, but they didn't let me.
Yeah, actually, that is the language. That
Yeah.
it's me, I am the innocent,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
else is guilty.
Yeah, even the president said that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But Nasrallah's like, I think they are at risk of losing some followers. Unfortunately, though, a lot of their followers are very, very loyal.
Yes.
But that's because they've been supporting these people for so many years. The loyalty comes from not just guilt, but also like you feeling indebted to them.
Yeah.
Because Dahi, like Tripoli, like other cities in the country, has also been kind of forgotten and neglected and just like,
True. Absolutely. Yeah.
what is the word? Sidelined.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And people.
Economically, politically.
Yeah,
all of the
and people
above.
act like it's a totally separate section, like it's not part of Greater Beirut when it is. So it eventually operated that way. They have their own security. They have their own. It is its own bubble.
Yeah.
And they get a lot of economic support, educational support.
Yeah.
You can't deny that.
So it's not. I mean, because there is a uprising against the system. To a point, they're shielded. Because of that history, that the chant "Killun, Killun, Killun" is only applicable to a point for now.
No, I think it's applicable to everybody.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to talk to people with compassion and understand that if they support Hezbollah or if they are grateful to their, what they did for their family, that doesn't mean that they can't join the revolution.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you have to talk to people, and it's not like all black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be indebted to them, and you can feel like you're grateful and everything, but you can still ask for your rights. You can
Right.
still come down to the streets and be like,
Right.
yeah, I support that party, but I'm leaving it at home. Right now, I'm here for my people.
Right. But so far we're not there yet.
I'm not sure, because I feel like the people that might live in Dahi and are there on the streets, and I've seen a lot of them. I used to live there. My family still lives there. My dad is there every day. He comes down
And
to
he's
the
one
streets.
of the people that is going in and out regularly. So it's,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Like people are there. But I don't think that those are the people that are the staunch supporters of Hezbollah either.
Right.
Like, the ones that are so loyal, it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's a lot of guilt there. Like, I can't turn on the party that, gave me everything. But they also need to understand it's not betraying a party if you're like, okay, thank you. But now I need to make sure my country can actually survive. I need to go stand with my fellow citizen. I need to go make sure that this country can actually move forward.
Yeah.
And you're not doing that for me anymore.
Yeah.
Just because a party does something for you doesn't mean they get, free
Permanent,
reign for
yeah.
the rest of their, what's the word?
It's not permanent protection.
They don't get to do whatever they want for the rest of time.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to always call out your representatives when they're not representing you anymore,
Right.
when they're not providing for you anymore,
Yeah.
when they're siding with others that are also corrupt.
So, as someone who is quite sensitive to that subject, watching the Prime Minister misread the resentment,
Yeah.
and then watching Nasrallah not bluntly saying it this way, but in effect saying, we want the Prime Minister to stay in his place. I think that showed that at this point, everyone in power is
Tone deaf?
not just tone deaf, but that if one goes, potentially they all go.
Yeah, they've kind of aligned themselves to the point where they have to all step down because you're
Exactly.
all
Right.
of the same side.
And we saw something, it could just be a symbolic gesture. It could literally just be them helping each other at a time of crisis. We saw Najib Miati yesterday at the podium
Oh, I
on the
missed that.
defensive. Oh, you didn't? So,
No.
basically, Bank Audi and his assets.
I saw the lawsuit stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And he was in a position of, he was defending himself but it's unusual to see him in a position where he has to defend himself financially.
Mm-hmm.
And accusations of corruption and theft. And you can look at it two ways. You could say that yes, these politicians that are in power right now are trying to scapegoat a few people, and he may be one of a few that are coming. But even if that's the case, there's something powerful about seeing someone like him, who's a powerful politician in Lebanon, on the defensive.
And being held accountable.
Sure. Even if he's being held accountable
by the wrong people.
Yeah, and even if they're doing it to preserve their whatever is left.
I think it's kind of stupid. They're shooting themselves in the foot.
Absolutely. And it's a win-win situation for the future of the state. Because this means now that you're going to see images like this over and over, and people are going to get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
A politician who's beforehand was pretty much untouchable is now has to say something to effect where he looks guilty. He just looks guilty. And that it's
I think anyone that's going to be accused right now is going to be assumed guilty too. It's like,
yeah. And I think that's the domino effect where people that
they're going
don't-
to just keep pointing fingers and
absolutely. And
everyone's going to start falling.
and none of these leaders get along. None of them.
They do now, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lifeline they've thrown to each other. Yeah, it's holding on to a sinking ship.
Yeah, because they know if one starts to fall, if one resigns, then the people will just be more and more empowered.
Yeah.
Which is already happening.
Which is already happening. Can I ask you though? So I wanted to get into you shared an emotional, an emotional moment online. You have a blog. In every section, there's optimism. I didn't get the sense of this is going to flicker and fade and die. I got the other side, which is we're now at a turning point in our history. I hope I got that right from you.
No,
Yeah.
it does feel that way, and I tried to convey it that way.
Yeah, and there's optimism. Everyone I talked to the last few days has that feeling inside, optimism, that this is different, this is special. What do you think are the circumstances necessary so that 2 weeks from now or a month from now, we still have that optimism in us, that we're not stepping back to our usual comfort zone of sectarian power sharing, of the old story of Lebanon, this communal, confessional power sharing thing we're stuck with?
Two things.
And
Well,
this is purely
Okay, well, just
subjective,
like
yeah.
throwing it off the top of my head, I
Yeah.
think for one thing, we have to depend on each other. Like you said, everyone is optimistic,
Yeah.
but I think that's because it's infectious. So I think when you feel like one of your friends is starting to lose ground and they're getting tired and they're like, I haven't slept in 3 days and
Right.
and I've been on the streets for 6 hours. You
Well,
kind of
we-
have to be like, it's
silly
okay.
Silly things like the weather. I mean, the weather is
Yeah, yeah.
changing, right? Fall has begun.
And they were out
so-
there in the rain, like.
Yeah.
But I think we sometimes have to be reminded that it's okay to take a break, and it's okay to, if you need a day
Yeah.
to not go down there, and I'm absolutely not telling people not to go to the streets, but if you need a day to like conserve some energy and sleep and not get sick, like I have a friend who's been going every day and now he's sick in bed and he's like, but I have to go down. Like, it feels like a duty. It feels like you have to do your shift every day and you have
Right.
to go down there just to make sure we make it to the weekend.
Which is, I mean, in a way, that's why we see these images, because it's the same people going every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to know that it's not going to end on Sunday. It's not going to, this is a long process.
So you think people should conserve a bit of their passion to keep it going?
I think we should know how to pace ourselves, like how to
Yeah.
make sure that we last, because it's not, as we've seen from neighboring countries, these revolutions don't happen in a couple days. And even if, let's say, tomorrow they resigned, that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Because then there's so much work to do. Like right now, people are working and putting together lists and demands and organizing and trying to create,
Because it's been
intellectual
It's
circles.
been leaderless up until now. 8th day,
Yeah.
there aren't names that have emerged yet.
I know a lot of people are frustrated by that, but I think it might be a good thing that we don't rush to, crown someone yet.
Yeah.
And it would be good to involve everyone in the process.
Yeah.
Because I think that was our mistake before, is we rushed and we got too excited, and then you might only be listening to a few people who have access instead of talking to everybody.
Yeah.
We don't want to repeat the mistake of leaving Tripoli out of the conversation or leaving Nabatiya out of the conversation. We don't want to ostracize anybody. The whole point is that this is a movement of the people.
Yeah. So I hope in the coming weeks, coming months, we still have that same momentum.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is the fear that everybody has, especially the diaspora.
Although they have proven to be well in tune and passionate, and I mean, it's great to see these images in Paris,
For sure.
in New York, in front of
Everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, all over the world, Lebanese are demanding change. The Lebanese that don't necessarily get along under different circumstances are demanding the same thing.
I think they're also plugged in because everybody has family back here,
Yeah.
and everybody has someone they left behind. So they have access to people who are maybe on the ground or at least know what's
Right.
happening. They're
Right.
not depending on, the main sources of media or international CNN, BBC, whatever. They're
They-
talking to real people.
Which have not been great at covering what's
Not
happening.
really, but
Yeah.
that's not entirely surprising either.
Because it's a domestic thing, it does not this is one of those rare occasions that Lebanon's story is not regional yet.
It's actually our own for now. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think, yeah, considering that, like, the whole world is kind of dealing with its own shit. Like, the U.S. has their impeachment, the U.K. has their Brexit, Chile is on fire. Like
Barcelona was
Barcelona is fighting for their own independent battle.
violent.
I think everyone's kind of got their own thing going on, so I'm not surprised that a tiny country in the Mediterranean is kind of being overlooked, and we're kind of used to that too.
Right, right.
It's happened before. But it's really nice to see the diaspora kind of take control of that and call them out, whether it's international media or it's just standing on a sidewalk together with the flags. Because
Yeah.
it shows they believe this is different too.
Not one
I've never seen that
political
before.
party flag this time around.
And I've
Not
never
one.
seen the diaspora like that.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many people mobilized like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have friends in the States that are like, we're organizing protests the same day on Saturday, so everybody's on the street on the same time,
Yeah.
at the same time. Like,
That's
when
true.
did that happen?
I mean, there's reflection. I mean, March 14, there was some of that. It did not grow to
To
the
this
point.
scale though,
No,
and
no,
with
no,
social
no.
media
You
and,
you think movement clearly did not reach this
No,
magnitude.
no.
Yeah.
and it might have been only because like You Stink was purely about the garbage crisis, so it was like focused on one problem and
true.
everything else was kind of lost
Yeah.
in the noise of everything. This is so many problems and just so much.
It's funny.
Pent-up
We have
rage.
this conversation and we're smelling the trash from.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mountain.
This is what I thought this
trash.
morning. I
Yeah.
actually tweeted this morning. Is like the stuff doesn't bother me so much anymore now because I'm like, yeah, well, soda. Like it's just my reaction to all this crap now. It's like, yeah, but we're doing something now. It feels like,
Right.
okay, I can tolerate this now because now there might be change.
Yeah.
But another thing about
Yeah.
the diaspora, before I forget, it's also shown how much we've like the extent of the brain drain
Yes.
and
Yes.
how much of our population is scattered across the
And
world.
this is not civil war. This is post-war brain
No,
drain.
it's very recent.
It's the youth that are abroad.
So much
We're-
of the
absolutely.
people I grew up with, none of them
Absolutely.
are here anymore.
Absolutely.
I thought about it a few times when I was walking down to downtown, like, why am I here by myself? Like, where are my friends?
They're all abroad.
And all the people that I would normally be protesting with or that I'm updating nonstop on all the different networks are not here.
Every friend of mine that I grew up with here, with the exception of very few, are abroad. And they're asking me what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're in tune. They're well in tune. And they care. But you're right, they're not here.
No,
that-
and so
yeah.
many have been like, I wish I was there, and I hardly ever hear
You-
that.
They wish they were here right
Yeah.
now. Absolutely, yeah. Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, usually the rhetoric is more of like the style of, what are you still doing in Lebanon?
Yeah.
Why are you still there? You could leave. Don't, like, why are you setting
up.
up your life there?
Yeah.
Why are you investing in the country? Like, just leave while you can. And now it's like, oh my God, yes, do this, please, please.
So I just want to ask you personally, because I think we're in the same boat right now. My tours are not happening. And I think a lot of people that are in downtown protesting are biting the bullet a bit financially.
Yeah.
And who knows how much longer the streets will be locked up or businesses stay shut down. But let's say it stays for a few more days. Do you think we will need to crash after this is over? Do you think the economy will need to crash for us to begin rebuilding it?
Wasn't it kind of heading that way anyway?
It was definitely crashing, but how much the financial burden we're already going through? Is there a sort of uncomfortable sort of problem here, which is the economy is being hit harder because we are taking what maybe 2 weeks off from
Yeah.
and I mean it in
Banks
terms
are
of
closed and
banks are closed, cash is unavailable, and literally you can't move. So anyway, even if you live in the north and want to come to Beirut, the highway's blocked, and you said it yourself. I mean, like, you've been putting all of your other projects on the side
Yeah.
to focus on this, which is right. We should be focusing. But how can we? I mean, I worry about the financial state of this country more today than I did 2 weeks ago.
yeah. I think a lot of people are worried about that, and they're worried that that would also be the reason that people will go back to work, or they'll
Yeah.
give up on this and be like, but I have to sustain my business, or I have to
Right.
I have to open, I have to answer these emails, I have to send out whatever, because
Generate
I work
income.
with countries that are not going through a revolution.
Absolutely.
They don't, like, they need
They don't
the
work on our
deliverables.
revolution, yeah.
Yeah, they need what is asked of me. I
Absolutely.
have to report to duty, like,
Yeah.
and like, as far as they're concerned, you're sitting at home, so
Yeah.
you can do the work. But I think what a lot of people are starting to understand or see is that we're gonna have to kind of deal with the sacrifice, and we're gonna have to put a lot on the line and possibly, yeah, crash for the greater good. That
That-
might sound way too idealistic and, like, flowery, but
No, but I think it's a true. There's a reality.
if
here.
we didn't go through this, where were we headed?
Yeah.
Like, the lira was plummeting, everything was too expensive, taxes left and right. Like, my main job is in imports. I work for my dad, and our company was hit incredibly hard, considering
Yeah.
all the added costs that we were forced to pay.
Yeah.
And that eventually will also trickle down to the customers. Like,
Sure.
it affects everybody.
Yeah.
So where were we going? Businesses were closing, people were unemployed, and that's just like people who are relatively lucky. There's still
Right. Exactly.
a massive population that are under the poverty line.
Yeah.
They don't have enough to eat. There were people in Martyr Square breaking into the parking meters just to get, like 25 thou,
Yeah.
so that they could pay for food for their kids. I mean,
Yeah. But that, I mean, so this is in a way cautious optimism that we have to get to a better financial situation. This is a bit of the pain we have to go through. And
Yeah,
we're going through
'cause-
it the right way because it's done this way. It's
yeah, if
not
we want
yeah.
to rework how we do things,
Yeah.
we can't just sit there thinking it'll work itself out.
Yeah.
Like, that's, I think, what, so many people were saying, okay, you want to go back home, you don't want to be at the protest, okay, get on the metro. Go home.
Yeah. Which metro?
Exactly. Like, that was the argument. Like, what are you going back to?
Yeah.
Like, so much of what we should have and how we should conduct our lives doesn't actually exist.
Let's end it on a positive note, because and I just want to go back.
Have
to
we
the-
not been positive?
Well, no, thing is, yes, we have.
Too
I-
revolutionary, I guess.
positive to a point, because you need to be. There is perspective here. It's not just a sort of step in the right direction. It is many steps at once,
Yeah.
and they don't necessarily all line up together in the right direction right now. They may.
I don't think we know really where
don't
we're
know,
headed.
yeah.
I think we just know we don't want to go back.
I think the name of the podcast you contribute to, A Better Beirut, I
Yeah.
think the name is fitting right now,
Yeah.
because all the people you've spoken to are on the streets right now,
For
in
sure.
Martyrs Square.
For sure.
We're here right now just doing this, but
Yeah.
I've been going in and out every day. You have been there. So there is a dedication at the moment, so that's a good thing.
That's kind of what we've been trying to show through the podcast, is
Yeah.
like, there are people here on the ground
Yeah.
fighting for a better Beirut, a better Lebanon, a better place
And the worst
where
of
we
times.
live.
Yeah,
And absolutely everybody that's been on the show is there.
yeah,
It's basically doing what they do every day anyway, but now actually hoping for a real result in the
Right.
system, not just on a personal, private level.
right. And I think, I get, I'm speaking on behalf of many people here, that they all want an end to the sectarian system that we
Yeah.
grew up with. On your own view on this, do you think a secular order will emerge from this?
Secularism isn't going to erase our sectarian
Right.
existence. Like,
Because
we're gonna
it's
have
embedded.
different sects here,
Sure.
and that's part of what Beirut is.
Or maybe
That's not
maybe it's the
bad.
reason Lebanon exists. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
It's-
whole thing.
There's nothing wrong with our diversity. That's
Yeah.
what makes it so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's erasing sectarian
Yeah.
existence, or, having this variety in the country. It's not saying you can't talk about Christianity or Islam or
Or
what
be
you
religious
believe
for
in.
that matter.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's not
Yeah.
about telling religious leaders you have no say in this. No. It's about, yeah, you can be secular and that doesn't erase religion.
But do you think that is the common sentiment shared by people protesting now? That they're ready for the next stage? I ask because I don't know, and I can't read this, whether or not a secular state is really at stake here. That this is the goal is to upend power sharing along confessional lines.
I can't say either because, I mean, for a while, before this all happened, after the parliamentary elections, I thought, okay, you know what? People who want a secular, technocratic government and country are the minority. People don't think
I think
this
technocrat
way.
more than secular. That's the word usually, right? Independent technocrat. But even then, it's like, well, the Christians will get these many technocrats.
Yeah.
Muslims will get this.
I think that there's a lot like connected to
There'll be the
why
minorities technocrats.
they want to divide it according to percentages and
Yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
It's also to keep, everyone represented.
Right.
And not have anyone in fear that they're going to be forgotten, which has happened.
That psychological
Yeah.
fear is, I think, still there, whether or without.
Probably.
Yeah.
But in all fairness, like I said, I thought that was the minority, and now look at it. It's the
Right.
majority. Now the majority want a change in regime. Now the
Yeah.
majority are down in the streets. So maybe, maybe things have changed.
Yeah.
Maybe all of this, this opportunistic rule of the party leaders that they were all loyal to has actually kind of taken the mask or taken the blindfold off, and they're like, no, I don't want to do it your way anymore.
If there's ever been a chance to rebuild Lebanon from before the Civil War, from day one, from the 1940s, to build a country that will last conflict, chaos, differences among communities, if there's ever been a shot at that, I think it's now. And I really hope at the end of the day, this time we get it right.
I do think there's a lot of healing happening in downtown.
Yeah.
There's a lot of exposure. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people meeting others that maybe they never spoke to before, talking
Yeah.
to people from different backgrounds, from different socioeconomic backgrounds,
Yeah.
and it's opening people's eyes that not everyone's like you.
Yeah,
We have
exactly.
different kinds of people here that you've never heard of. So
Let's hope for the best. Farrah, thank you for your time. Check out A Better Beirut and
B for Bacchus.
B for Bacchus. And there's one episode already released before.
There's two actually. I
Two.
just haven't talked about it because
Oh.
I've been busy. This doesn't feel fair to talk about it right now.
If anyone wants a temporary break from all that's happening and you want to go into wine, check that podcast out. And go to bambissoapbox.com.
Yes,
There's years and years of thoughts there.
my whole life story.
Your life story. And I'm honored. I'm in two separate articles over the years.
3.
3.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I think
I'm in
so,
3.
yeah, 3.
Okay. Well, in that case, really go to the go 3 times. And thanks again, Farrah.
Thank you for having me.
And when the timing is right, I'll sit down with Farrah again and talk about wine, because that is really what we wanted to get into. She is well versed in not just Lebanese wine, but the history of regional wine. It really is an episode to itself. So hopefully we'll get there as soon as possible. And I'm releasing new episodes as quickly as I can, trying to capture the moments as they emerge. An episode each day from a variety of voices, all supporting this uprising. Voices in Lebanon and abroad, all on the same page when it comes to change, political change, economic change, and a brighter future for this country. If you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe through your preferred podcast platform. Simply go to Stitcher, Google, Spotify, Apple, you name it. Click subscribe on the Beirut Banyan, and you'll be updated as new episodes are released. And if you prefer YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. Just search for us, you'll find us there as well. Until next time, I'm Ronnie Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.